to just get you started with some of our basic tools. Make sure you're using them right and using them in a way that's safe. Okay, so I know you might be using a ruler on a computer and not used to doing it manually. That's kind of what I want to talk to you about right now. Actually, this is not a ruler. Technically, this is a rule, R-U-L-E, and I am the ruler. So a little bit of tech info there if you really want to be for sure, but I'll call it a ruler. Notice that I've got a metal ruler and mine has cork on the bottom. This cork keeps it from sliding, which is important when you're using an extremely sharp X-acto knife that can cut off the tip of your finger if you're not careful. And so if you don't have a metal rule with this on the back, just take some masking tape and the right width and put it on the back, and that will keep it from sliding. The other thing you might want to do is if you use a micron pen because you're into animation or anime and manga, the micron pen, sometimes if you use it against a ruler, will bleed. And so if you tape a penny on each end of it, the penny will lift the rule up so that when you run your ink pen along it, you won't smear anything. Make sure your ruler stays really clean. Wipe it down frequently. Notice that when you look at this rule here, I'm going to only look at the inches at this point, that when, sorry, my camera's upside down. Let's see. When I'm looking at the 1 inch point, it doesn't really start at the edge. It starts right here. And so you have about 1/4 of an inch where this is just, extra. Sometimes it's hard to remember that, especially when you're in the middle of creating. So it might not be a bad idea to just take a piece of tape and very carefully put it at that mark. Get it for you. And then wrap the tape around like this. And when you have this in place now, off the excess, when you have that in place, it just reminds you that your measurement starts there. Now, whenever you're using an X-acto knife blade, there's a couple of things to talk about before I cut that piece of tape off. This is called a number 11 blade. You open up the handle, you pull it out, a number 11 blade looks like that. Now, I know that this blade has been used because I can see that, but it's important to get yourself some fresh blades. Fresh, sharp blades are way safer than dull blades. And one way you can tell your dull blades is that you'll see a little wear here on the edge. So the very point of it will get kind of dark. So what happens is when you notice you're cutting and you're not getting through the cardboard or your paper is tearing, it's not you, and you can keep cutting and cutting, but you'll keep tearing up your materials. It's your knife blade. So it's a good idea to use fresh blades as often as possible. What I do is that sometimes I want blades that are really fresh for like the perfect cut on say a finished project. And then I have some blades where I'm just hacking away at cardboard. So I will have a jar with a lid that has used blades in it. And I'll change the blades over for when I'm doing something fresh, and then I'll change them over and get a used blade when I'm just hacking away like whittling wood practically. So fresh blades are important. You open this up, you put this in. Now you can get plastic X-acto knives that look the same. I think that these are far more safe and dependable. Cutting off the end of your finger to put yourself in the emergency room, if you don't have health insurance, it's about $1,200. I know because a student once did it. X-acto blades are, maybe 30 cents each. So, it's cheaper than a fingertip. So make sure you get extra blades, right? So here what I've done is I've done a little warning sign here at the 1 inch mark to let me know that that's where my measurement actually starts. Now on your measurements here, you can kind of count off. The long line is the halfway mark. And anything in between that that's not quite as long as a 1/4 mark 18th, and 16th. So the half marks are longest, the quarter marks are next longest, the eighth marks are next shortest, 16th are the most short. So you can do a little bit of math here to get 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. You'll see I have a little black mark here. When I've been doing my fashion design, I need a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Like my seam is here and I got 5/8 inch here to cut. Well, when I'm creating original patterns, I need this mark a lot. I don't take the mark from the edge to this 5/8 because sometimes this edge gets off. This edge where it says 1 is so clear and specific that I go, okay, here's my beginning mark, here's 5/8, and I'll put a little line there. If you are doing something like getting a 2-inch cube and you have to hit 2 inches each and every time, and you're a visual person, it really doesn't hurt to put a piece of tape like that or the other way, because then if you're going to keep doing 2 inches for a whole project like the one coming up, it should be exact. But now I know that from here to here is 2 inches. So my rulers get tape on them quite a bit. It's nice to have a cutting mat like this to cut on, because as you can see, it's marked off in inches and then it's marked off in half and quarter inches, which makes lining things up a breeze. If you don't have one of these, solid cardboard, not corrugated cardboard, will work okay. It'll dull your knife a little bit more often, but you know, it'll work okay. We have these in the RBC studio, and if you think you want to check one out, they're really great. Just email me and I'll get security to let you in so you can check one out. Okay, there's something I want you to also know about using your knife. Several things I want you to know about using your knife. I'm going to be cutting this rough edge off, okay? Whenever you use your knife, I want you to think like a bear claw, like you've got claws, okay? I always want you to hold your ruler like this. If you hold your ruler like this, it's real easy for this knife blade to come along and cut the tip of your finger. So professional chefs and designers never stick their fingers in the way of a knife. You always do this. This way your knuckles will pick up on the edge of the knife before the blade hits your finger, and you're just going to be using your knuckles kind of as an antenna. So just get in the habit of holding your ruler like this. It's also useful to hold your knife sometimes like this, because when you hold your knife like this, see how I can hold it tight here and get pressure here. And so this is almost like I can guide it. So if you're finding that you're having problems doing your knife like this and it rolls or rotates, try doing something where you're holding the blade like this. Like, sorry, my camera, like this, okay? You can get more control. The other thing is, instead of cutting away from you, it's easy for you not to be able to control your knife. You always will control your knife better if you cut towards yourself. So here you can see I'm lining up the edge of the paper here on my measuring mat. You could also, on a piece of cardboard, get a corner or something. And if you want to make something true and square, use a lot of tape. When you're doing design work, it's quick. Okay, so if I am cutting, if I take my ruler and line it up here and I cut towards myself, I will have a whole lot more control. I will have even more control. I was sitting just then if I stand up. So if I stand up and I line up my ruler and I do my hands like this, and then I'm going to use my pointer finger to cut. Now, sometimes, let me move the camera back. Sometimes I can cut in one stroke, but often when I'm cutting, as I pull towards myself, I can't cut through the cardboard all at once. Like if you have a really thick piece of foam core or a thick piece of cardboard, you know, it's hard to get all the way through it. So what you do is, if you're not positive, don't move the ruler, don't move your hand, always come back for a second cut. The first cut will cut the top this keeps that from happening. And see, I can tell when I've gotten rid of it. Now, the reason that use metal and not wood is because otherwise you make toothpicks, okay? Now, if I have something like this, and let's say this is my beautiful artwork, okay? It's just a box top. And I need to trim off an edge around my artwork. Let's say the artwork's over here. When you're using your ruler, never go like this, like I'm lining it up. Let's say, I'll talk to you about measuring, but I do this and I start to cut. If I do go off at this point, like I lose control of my blade or it wavers, it's going towards the artwork. My finger gets in the way, I bleed all over the artwork. If you can help it at all, protect the side that the artwork's on and then cut. I'm a lefty. So what I would do in this case is, in order to protect the artwork, I might turn it what to me seems like upside down. I will do my measurements and then I'll do my cut towards me. So always cover up the artwork side that you're working on. So cut away from the artwork. Let's talk about measuring a little bit, because in design, I have to sit, sorry about the noise. In design, if your measurements aren't completely accurate, it's really bad. In transfer schools, when you go into design, if they tell 100 students to make their backing board 9 by 12, they'll stack up everybody's homework 9 by 12. And if any of them sticks out, you get an F. So like you can't screw around on assignments in design. Not only that, but if this is like a package design and it's 1/4 of an inch off, then the whole assembly line, the labels, the boxes they get packed into, the shelves they get put on, all of that is off. If you're an architect and you're 1/4 of an inch off on your plans, it can be 2 or 3 feet off on a room, doesn't work. So let's talk about hand measuring. Usually your paper is square, or your poster board, and it's worth it to like try to work from the corner of your poster board. What you want to do here is, I have to make a little room here, sorry. Let's say I'm going to measure 2 inches out. So I'm lining this up to make it square. Because of my space, I'm going to start at 4 and I'm going to measure 2 inches to 6. That'll be 2 inches. Now I have a very, very sharp pencil and I'll mark 6 here from the edge, and then I'll do it here. And you want to get at least 3 measurements, 1 on each end and 1 in the middle. I also want to be careful that I don't do that with my ruler, because then the line and the mark gets off. So when I come in here and I'm setting it on 4, a nice little trick is to look at your leftover space here. And if it's not even, move your ruler up until the space seems even. Okay, so like I can visually see that my 4 is pretty well lined up. Here's 2. I now have 1, 2, 3 very light marks. When I put my ruler down and I measure with this, I can line up all 3 marks. If one of the marks is off, that means I was a little off in my measurement. So I'm not going to make a very light line towards me. Now you also have to be careful. I have lousy lighting in this space I'm in. See how the shadows are to the left of my hand? That means that my ruler is casting a shadow here. And unless I really know what I'm doing, that can really throw you off. So set your light so that the light is lighting up the edge of the ruler where you're working. Because if I have my pencil like this at an angle and I don't see the edge, I can be a 1/16 of an inch off, which can really throw things off. Now, you want to, as much as possible, work from the edge or the corner of your paper. So here I might say, okay, I've got this 2 inches, and now I want to go 2 inches this way. And so I would once again make sure that my marks were lined up. I'm going to mark two here. Mark 2 here. My ruler's a little off. And I mark 2 here. Now, a lot of times art students are art students because they're not math students. And so having to continuously say for a 2-inch cube, keep measuring 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, drives them a little crazy. They lose interest. Here my tick marks are a little, these little marks are called tick marks, and they're a little off because I've been talking to you. So normally I'd look out better. So here I have 2 inches, 2 inches. I'm starting to get a corner. Well, get used to measuring things. It'll help your eye. Like you'll be able to see real quickly how big something is. For instance, this tape is 1.5 inches wide. I was going around just looking at what I had in my studio, and I noticed that this box is exactly 2 inches wide, and the base a box with 2 inches, or over the semester it seems like I'm going to have to be making things that have a certain size to them. Get a template. Now you can download templates from the internet. Like if you want a 2-inch square or 1-inch square, let's say you don't have one of these great mats at home, but just go online and download yourself a template, and then you can use that template, paper template, to make a cardboard template. So here I'm moving my fingers out of the way, I'm pulling towards me, I'm going right on the fold, and I'm pulling that knife towards me several times till I feel that. Then I'm going to do this. And because I measured it once, and I'm fairly sure that the VMF, Virginia Museum of Fine Art, uses pretty precise measurements on good boxes, I now have a 2-inch template. Okay, my blade's getting dull. See how that's torn up? Tell you what, I'll tell you what you do if you do that. There's a trick. Okay, so I've got this cut. Need to change my blade. See how this is a funky edge right here? Well, you don't have to start over. You can take the edge of your X-acto knife, and a lot of times you can buffer this down a little bit. This is a little bit too rough for that, but it'll work. You can get rid of that funkiness that way. Sometimes you can kind of shave it off. The other little trick is to take a candle and rub a candle across it, because the candle wax will get the fuzz taken care of. So you can kind of fix stuff like that. Best thing to do is change your blade. Now that I have a 2-inch template that I can keep for the whole semester, instead of measuring 3 times, I can, just line this up real carefully with the edges and zip. I've got the same measurement. It's useful to kind of pay attention to sizes. For instance, Post-it notes. Post-it notes are 3 inches by 3 inches. So if you have to do a box project or cut a square for a design project, pop a Post-it note down and trace around that. That's helpful. When I say go around measuring things, you'll be surprised that if you get a good eye for, like, you really know how big things are. This tape is 1.5 inches. For example, I have this cool little origami fold box. And if I wanted to make one, it seems like the folds are pretty complicated. Since I'm good at measuring now, I can take my rule. I can see that this fold is 1.5 inches. So each of these are 1.5 inches. And at first I was like, that's going to be a pain in the butt to figure out how to fold along that line. It's like, no, it won't be, because I know that that fold is the same as my tape. So if I were to make one of these, I would just put a piece of tape there along that fold, and then I would know that's exactly where to fold that line. So, you can use a ruler, but once you get a ruler, you can measure other things like templates that can help you out a lot. All right, let's see. The other thing that surprises me sometimes when I see people work, I have here, like, one of the first projects in Design 2. And we're going to just construct a simple box, make sure you know how to do it right. So that's another video, but here I've planned the box with flaps, and here's the box template itself. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut this out a poster board and make a perfect white box. I'm surprised by the number of people who just plunk it down in the center of the page and cut it out, or cut it out this way, because they're wasting all this space. Okay, so what you want to do with poster board or anything else that you buy is when you line something up to work with it. I'm going to flip this over. I've been using the pattern, so it's a little bit bent. So what I might do here is put this in the corner, and I will demonstrate a little bit better on the video, but I can also take this and just, at least at first, get some guidelines in. I will later on go back with my ruler and make sure I've got these lines exactly perfectly straight. I could go ahead and mark all this off with my ruler too without tracing it. I just find it's faster to get, you know, the general placement of something like this. But what I'm doing is I'm using the edges of the paper and I'm taking the material from the corner. That way, when I cut this out, I won't cut a big hole in the middle of the paper and not be able to use it anymore. Some of you will be like, yeah, who would do that? You'd be surprised. A lot of people do that. So what happens here is I'm going to make some little lines at my fold lines. These are called tick marks, and they allow me to know where I'm going to want to line up my paper, my ruler. So now I have a general outline in the corner, and I know that's very light, but that's about as light as you want it to be. A hand-drawn line is never as good as a ruled line. So what I'm going to do now is come back in here and I'm going to tighten that up. Now I want to have a really super sharp pencil on this. Take my time and I'm going to start here and I'm going to go straight up and down and make that line. Then I'm going to go straight up and down and make this, yes, this line. Make sure I got it. Measure twice, cut once, otherwise you screw up. Okay, then I'm going to come in here, make this line, come across here, make this line. And what you're seeing me do here is really clean up my lines. If I was doing the, when I do this for the video for the box, how to make it, I will take my time a little bit more. I'm kind of just giving you the idea of, you know, the extent to where I use a ruler. Now you're going to be wanting, when I have projects like this, to not use your X-acto knife and get out your scissors. And it's like, can I just cut it out? No, you can't. What happens when you use scissors is that cutting motion makes the paper slide every time the blades go. And so it's really impossible to get a perfectly cut straight edge here. You may think you can get a straight line here, but in actuality, the scissors will cut and then twist as you take them out. So what you want to do in a case like this is I'm going to make some lines that let me know where these lines begin and end. If I have a ruler over them, and I go into this a little more, but what I'm doing here is I'm just extending the lines so that if when I cover a line up, I can't see where something starts and ends. These little tick lines go, okay, there's something here. So what I will do in this case is I would come in here, probably stand up, start at this point. Now, when you're starting at a certain point, sometimes your knife blade might slip, and I want to stop a cut exactly right there. The way to do that is to first take the point of your knife and make a puncture wound there. So what I'm doing is exactly at this corner, I'm making a puncture wound. And maybe exactly at this corner, I'm making a puncture wound. A push pin works really great for this. What I've just done here is I've made a little ding in the poster board, and my knife will feel it when I get there. So just like a puncture wound, kind of pokes a hole and it doesn't tear. Now, when I start this, my knife will feel, let me get that. There we go. My knife will start exactly in that point. And then as I come here, if I'm really paying attention, my blade will feel that little puncture wound. When you first get started, I would really recommend using a push pin in order to do that. So I might stop here, and then I wouldn't move my ruler, and I'd start here, and I'd cut down here, and then I'd stop. If you need to turn your blade, don't turn it this way. What you want to do is put it up on a pivot, straight up and down, because I can pivot that point, and then turn the point, and then move your ruler, and then cut again. Okay, so anytime I have to move my knife, I go up on tippy toe with a knife, I go up on point, and then lay the point straight back down. Okay, and then try to pull it towards me. So get used to using this. You know, it looks like it's really straightforward and it's no big deal. I guess it isn't, but it really is kind of an acquired skill to use your knife and use your ruler cleanly and perfectly. So I hope this helps and maybe you picked up a tip or two. Okay, sound good? Thanks.